How we doing this morning? We are back out here again. Uh, it is March 1st, crisp Saturday morning here in the Northeast. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. For those of you who have stopped in, welcome. Give it a few moments. I'm already out on this walk. I've only been out here for a few minutes. Uh, did a little warm up, getting a little muscles flexed out, the knees warmed up, preparing for the walk. I want to thank you guys for joining, for being here. Thank everyone for the consideration. Uh, getting ready for another day, man. Just getting ready for another day. And this morning, one of the things that we're going to talk about is specifically repetition and the benefit of it. All the elements of discipline are important. Repetition is truly important. Uh, one of the great things about the repetition we'll cover later. It is it is key in the fundamental development of discipline. I'm here this morning on this Saturday morning walk because your goals don't take any days off. The things you want to achieve don't take any days off. So you should be spending every day taking strides to get closer to achieving those goals, continuing to grow, understanding that ultimately you are your purpose. You are the purpose for your life. You are the purpose for the things that you do. Uh, it's not always about something that you've just to work on or want to achieve. Sometimes it's just you. A lot of times it is just you becoming a better version of you and you working on you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome in. This is 30 walk and talk that we do in the morning. Love to hear from you guys. Please drop a like, share, s- say something in the comments if you like, any questions. But I just want to talk about repetition this morning and just with some calm, usually up around 3:50, 3:55. I have an alarm that wakes me up at 3:50. My body usually wakes up on its own somewhere around 4:05 without an alarm, but I'm trying to get ahead of that. I'm trying to get ahead of the 4 o'clock wake up. I just want to make sure I'm waking up well rested and prepared to go. So again, thank you for joining this morning. I'm out on the walk in the neighborhood, uh, just walking down through here. We are surrounded on one side. We are, say, uh, surrounded on one side, houses and uh, apartments, things like that. And on the other side of the street, we do have quite a bit of foliage, forestry, and woods. So quaint community. I enjoy being in, enjoy taking these walks. They're quite peaceful in the morning. You may notice the occasional car passing by. So I am not the only one up, but definitely we are one of the few people who do get up at this time of the morning to take advantage of this opportunity to get a jump start on our on ourselves really. This is time to work on you. This is time to get you ready for your day. Get you ready for the constant growth that we're in. And a walk is a great way to do it. It's not a intense workout. I I've replaced uh, the meditation with the walk. So the walk for me is a way to get to the morning, get the blood flowing, um, do a workout later on in the day, make sure I focus on personal development, make sure I find some time to read. Um, when I do journal, and this is one of the things that I have in my book. Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys doing this morning? Thanks for stopping in. Looks like we have Mr. Putdown and Preston. Welcome in. Thank you guys so much for dropping a comment and stopping by. Please like and share as much as possible. The thing for me is understanding during my development and during my growth, I had to figure out how I was going to make things happen for myself. Good morning. How are you doing there? Good morning. That guy. Uh, welcome in, that guy. Minion Park. Thank you. You have a good day as well. And so, one of the things that I want to make sure that I always do in terms of repetition is, or in terms of discipline development, is the repetition portion. And so, the repetition portion is critical. And the reason it's critical is because a lot of people never develop discipline because we start on the wrong end of it, right? You can't build a pyramid from the top down. You have to start with the cornerstones, you have to start with the foundation. And the four cornerstones, as I like to say, of discipline are going to be repetition, it's going to be consistency, it's going to be patience and perseverance. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing there this morning? Uh, Vaughn, welcome in. Thank you very much. Uh, and so one of the things we can discuss black women later if you like to, Vaughn. Please like, subscribe. My contact information is on there. I'd be happy to kind of delve into that subject with you. And so one of the things about developing your discipline and the requirement for there to be um, repetition is one of these things that allow for you to get used to how life works, right? Uh, it gets used to how things go in your life and the life of people around you. So one of the ways you do that, one of the ways that you really make a point of developing that part of you that can perform consistently or can perform repeatedly in a certain just in that given pattern, not looking at the performance levels, just in that pattern is repetition. And so repetition is how we learn. It's how we teach ourselves things. It's how babies learn how to walk. It's how babies learn how to go potty. It's how we grow. It's how we go through the process. Now, some learning is challenged. Some learning is difficult. Some things you have to learn the hard way. Not everything requires for you to learn it the hard way. And I am adamant about that and believing not everything requires for you to learn it the hard way. But some things do require for you to take on some challenges during the process. Repetition is the easy one to achieve. Not easy in as much as repetition is a uh, 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 as in like it doesn't require an investment. It's not easy like, oh, you don't have to do anything for it. It still has work for you to do, but it's just that thing, right? So if the repetitious thing that you're looking to develop, the area in which you're looking to develop repetition, if that has to do with uh, waking up in the morning, you just got to wake up, right? And so there are other elements to waking up in the morning that you may want to add later. There are other things you may want to add, but definitely being able to, excuse me, being able to start that by saying, hey, here's this specific thing that I do uh, every day, and it's just getting up. You want to work on that because that's the building block. That's how your body says, okay, your mind can accept I do this thing constantly. I do it over and over and over again. Repetition is that little building block that you slide in there, right? Other elements are going to come, but repetition is the beginning. Repetition is something that you can do and learn from. So, one of the things that happened with me on my journey for repetition as a personal trainer, when I was younger, I would take my son with me to the gym. And so, when I would take my son with me to the gym, we get in, I had a routine, right? I go in as a personal trainer. I'm basically an independent contractor. I have my schedule. I know what clients are coming in. So I need to start to gather the equipment. I need to start to get myself into the appropriate mental headspace. And so when I go in the gym, the first thing I do is not work out. The first thing I do is work. So I start looking for the equipment that I need. And I had certain rooms that I would go into because of where the equipment was stored. And then I would bring it to where I needed it to be. Now, my son at this time was quite young, maybe 4, almost 5. But I remember we would go in, and as I would go into these different rooms to pick up this equipment, my son, of course, would follow me around. Like, this place is huge. So he'd be right there with me. We walk in the rooms, and after a short period of time, of course, the repetition of it, just seeing me do it, my son became, he began to understand what needed to be done. And so my my repeated behavior, my repetitious behavior in front of my son led to my son establishing uh, a hardwired process of this is what you do when you go in the gym. And so, because we had done this pattern for quite a while, over a few days in the morning, um, when I went into the gym, one day we go to visit the gym, and it wasn't really a day for me to work. I believe we had gone past to pick something up, but as always, my son jumps out the car. He goes to run inside with me, and he looks to pick up the routine. So I don't head to the aerobics room like I normally do first. I head for the office. And when I'm heading for the office, my son stops. Like his brain, it took a second. His little young brain was like, yeah, this isn't how this works. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for stopping in. I appreciate you being here this morning while we walk and talk about repetition and the benefit of it in being uh, being disciplined and developing discipline. So please, I appreciate you being here. Please drop a comment in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share. And so my son, he's there with me. He's going through the process, but in his mind, on this given morning, the process is broken. So he can't fathom it. He can't understand it because we have a pattern. We have repetition. So it doesn't matter how fast we get it done. He's not calculating how many weights we have to carry. He's not doing any of those things because whenever we do anything, um, whenever we take any action, whenever we grow in any way, um, we tend to mark off the different levels at which we've grown. But when you're developing repetition, the repetition, the fact that we are doing it again is the mark, right? So the fact that we're getting up and we're tapping the bell, we're ringing the bell, as I like to say, is the repetition. So this has hardwired my son to believe this is how life works. When the bell rings, when when we walk in here, when we arrive at this location, this is what we do. Doesn't matter what time we arrive here. It doesn't matter who else is here. It doesn't matter what's going on. When we arrive here, this is the pattern. This is the repetition. And so when you start establishing a pattern for yourself. Myron Golden has a line that says, man cannot consistently perform in a way that is inconsistent with their programming. And I'm paraphrasing that. But essentially, what Myron Golden is saying by saying that is he's letting us know that if you do not have a operating system, if you do not have programming in place, if you do not have a manner in which you perform on a regular basis, then it will be set by default. The outside world will set it for you. And then you will do that. You will do whatever the outside world says you need to do. You will follow the outside world's repetitious pattern. And you don't know whether or not it's conducive because you haven't set a goal for yourself. You haven't decided that there's a purpose for you and you are that purpose. And you're going to seek to achieve and to grow in that space. So repetition is important because you can be given a pattern. You can be given someone else's repetition if you don't set your own. You can teach your repetition to someone else. As they say, all behavior is learned behavior. We're not doing any of this stuff by accident. We don't behave the way we behave, walk the way we walk. We don't communicate in the manner in which we do without having learned it. There's a degree of learnedness, hey, look at that big word, that is used when it comes to talking to people, when it comes to learning from people, when it comes to being a person. There are so many things that we have to keep in mind about what we're doing and how it impacts us, how our life is being driven by that thing. And repetition allows us to take control of those small elements, right? So there are really small elements of repetition that are just building blocks for you to get stronger in your personal growth. And I want to thank everyone who's here for being here. Again, this is our walk and talk we do every morning at 4:30 here at B&V Finance Fixers. Please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And so one of the things that's always important is to make sure when we're developing ourselves, if we want to achieve something, if we want to see something for ourselves, we need to be a part of the process. And that's the power of repetition. That's the power of development. And so it's the same thing when I work with my clients. I just shared the story about my son. It's the same thing when I work with my clients. But what happens is when you start working with other people and the things that you do in repetition have a requirement to perform at a certain level, when you get to that point, now what you're looking at is consistency. It moves over from repetition to consistency. And I want us to be able to have a talk about consistency. I want us to be able to keep in mind the importance of consistency. And the reason I want us to be able to do that, even though we're not going to cover it in detail this morning, is for us to understand at this point, we're grading the repetition, right? We're grading how we are now performing in that space. Good morning. Uh, don't know what that name is, but we're doing the type of work that's necessary in order for us to be able to. But thank you so much for the comment. Please like, subscribe, hit a thumbs up on there. I would love it. So we are in a space where the repetition, once it starts to be graded, once it starts to become a mark of of performance, it moves into consistency. But it starts with repetition, man. Oh my goodness. And it's such a powerful thing because we can help our children develop repetition early in their life. The sooner we get that repetition ingrained, the easier it becomes. Because as a child, you don't know any different, right? So here's one of the things about change, and change is difficult for everyone. Change, good change or bad change is hard. We can get hardwired one way. Uh, how do we know when it's fully graded? Are you talking about how do we know when consistency is fully graded? Because we know when consistency is fully graded, consistent. So these are the cornerstones. What I'm talking about this morning are the four cornerstones to discipline. We're focusing this morning on the cornerstone of repetition, but the way that you know when consistency, when you know consistency is graded, is you have to set benchmarks, right? And so I always use personal training as an example. And the way that you know that how consistency is graded is you set benchmarks for performance, and then you use those benchmarks to uh, figure out exactly how you're going to, or exactly when and how you develop your training process to identify your growth. So it's still repetitions. So start with 10 pounds on the bar. We do bench press. You do 4 sets of 5 reps, and then you grade that out over a period of time. And then you look to move to the next weight at the same number of repetitions, same number of sets. So that's one way to grow. There are all types of things that you can do to change um, the elements of it, but that's how it's graded. So we'll get into consistency more later. But the thing with repetition that's important is that when you teach repetition early on, good morning, John. Please like, subscribe, share. I would love for you guys to do that. Again, this morning here on BNV Finance Fixers, we're doing our 4:30 a.m. walk and talk. And this morning, as I said before, our focus is on being able to understand repetition and the power of it. And so, what we have when it comes to uh, this repetition, when it comes to doing this work, when it comes to being able to uh, pass this skill set on to a younger generation, is if something becomes a pattern and it becomes a repetition, then it gets locked in. And you don't need others to be able to tell you what this next act for you should be. Oh my goodness, guys, my camera just went haywire. And so there we go. And so since you don't need other people to tell you specifically what this act is going to be, then you're able to give me a moment. Oh man, there I am. Oh, ooh, the end of this thing just went crazy. There we go. All right. You guys still there with me? I apologize for that. Let me see if I can get a little bit more color on there, a little bit more light. All right. So as I was saying, um, that repetition that we develop while we're going through the process and that we pass on to our children, it can be positive and negative. So we want to be very, very mindful because they're watching. And so it is whatever the pattern is, at whatever interval can be repetition. Don't be confused to believe that repetition is something that has to happen every day. Don't be confused or tricked into believing that repetition is something that has to happen every few minutes. Uh, don't be confused or tricked into believe that repetition can only be ingrained by it happening um, in a short time period. Repetition can be a lot. So one of the difficulties, one of the challenges that I faced in my childhood growing up was my birth father uh, drove a cab pretty much anywhere he went. He would drive a cab and he would start a church. That was my daddy. And one of the things my daddy would do um, is move about every year. You know, so growing up with my dad, I never really focused in school. Because when I was young, and I'm kind of dating myself, you didn't need transcripts to get into a new school. You went to a school that gave you a test. You told them how old you were, whatever age you said you were, and how, depending on how well you did on the test, determine what class they put you into. But my dad always worked with us on math. We grew up in the Washington, D.C. area for quite a bit of time. Those of you who live in this area know that the license plates have numbers, just numbers, so three numbers and then three more numbers, unless you get like uh, what do they call it, like a vanity plate. And because of that, we would sit in the car and we would learn to add. We would learn to add the three numbers together, to add the 200, the three-digit numbers to one another. And we would do that process. And so I was good at math growing up as a young man. And so there were no challenges for me in the area of math. And then we would read. When he would drive his cab, I'd ride with him. He'd have me look at the map, figure out what streets went where, which way to turn, and what to do. This was all a part of the process of me growing up. And so I learned things through repetition. But one of the things that I learned is I didn't need to pass in school. I just needed to learn. I didn't need to go to school. I just needed to learn. I just needed to know what was necessary to be wherever I needed to be. And so once I got into school, I was challenged with discipline issues. And the reason I was challenged with discipline issues is because discipline didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to have this structure of doing things in a certain way when the only reason I'm here is to do this work. And I'm not going to be here next year anyway. That was a pattern. It was a pattern my father gave to me. It was a pattern he taught me. And it was a pattern that I followed. So in my daily life, on a regular basis, I would read, I would do math, I was able to solve problems, I could understand. There would just, it's just the, it's just the information needed in order to achieve was available to me. Good morning. How you doing out there? And so I don't think so, Ian, but thanks for the question. So here's the thing about going through this process for me. Here's the thing about growing up in this way for me. By growing up this way, I was able to learn this repetitious pattern. And I lived that way for years. But the knowledge of it, that pattern only repeated once, maybe twice a year. Maybe if we moved in the middle of the school year, I would have to test into another district. But that's as much as I had to do. So I learned the repetition of it. Challenges came in later when there were some elements in high school going through algebra 2, some of the higher level maths, uh, which required for me to spend a little bit more time studying. But getting through school wasn't a problem for me. Solving problems, answering questions, reading, it wasn't a challenge, but it created a pattern for me that I needed to move every year. And I carried that with me for a long time into adulthood. I carried that with me into my children's life. I carried that with me into my marriage, to where my belief was there should always be a way to move. And I tried to justify it by saying the more frequently I move, the more opportunities I open myself up to. Because that's how it worked for me in school. That's how it worked for me with my dad. Every time we moved, we were able to have access to more cabs or have access to a better housing situation, have access to more money. And so my belief was this is the way you achieve these things. As flawed as that belief was, it was the yearly repetition of what I was taught as a child. So repetition is important because once you ingrain repetition, once you get that in there, it's a lot harder to break than it is to set. So going towards discipline, it's important to have repetition, but all four cornerstones are important. It's repetition, it's consistency, it's patience, and it's perseverance. Guys, my recently released book, From Survival to Success, is available now on Amazon. Please visit the page, and there you'll see a link for the book. Pick it up, take a read, take a look into part of my journey on what I've done to move myself as a man and as a father and a husband through the difficulties and challenges of overcoming previous shortcomings and becoming the man that I'm supposed to be using discipline. Discipline is a phenomenal tool. Once you develop it, you can aim it at anything. And once you have it aimed at something, you're able to take care of as many things as you like. Thank you guys. It was a blessing. It was appreciated working with you today. You guys take care, have fun, and I'll see you guys on the next walk. God bless you.